You're welcome. I want to talk about multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor authentication is a serious topic in the modern world that we have right now, with all manner of breaches being recorded against organizations. So we've had cases of brute force attack being used to get people's password. So the more critical an application is or a system is, then the organization needs to step up on the access controls that will need to be satisfied before you can have access to that particular information asset. So let's first look at identification versus authentication. These are common words you as a security person or as an auditor, as a risk management person, or you have been hearing identification and authentication. Are they the same? No. Okay. Identification is actually done by the user. Authentication is done by the system. This is how it happens. Let's assume you are driving on the road and a policeman stops your car, and he has to see your driving license. So you bring out your driving license and give him. Now, what you have done by giving him your driving license is identification. You have identified yourself to the police officer. Now, the driving license you gave the police officer could be fake. Is possible. So it's possible the driving license may not even be your own. It could be original, but might not be your own. Okay. So the authentication is not done by the police officer. So the police officer knows the standard format, content of an original driving license. So he looks at it, compares it with what he's expecting, and if it's okay, he gives it back and say, "Thank you for your time. You can go ahead." That's authentication. So identification, you provide your credentials. Authentication, the system confirms the credentials. So you want to log into a system. Okay, the system says type your user ID and password. So you key your user ID and password. What you have done is you have identified yourself to the system, but that does not mean you are the person that is actually meant to be using that ID. So the system confirms your ID, confirms your password, and if both are correct, the system gives you access. Okay, so that's what we mean by identification and authentication. Please take note of that. So when we are talking about multi-factor authentication, we are talking about the levels of authentication possible. So we have like 3 levels of authentication. What to know. So what to know is uh, authentication mechanism that require your password. So for example, you type your password. That is what you know. Your user ID is something you have to cram. Okay, a passphrase. So it's like something you have to say. Okay, good morning, Google. Something like that. So once you say it, the system captures it and decide whether that was what was pre-stored. Then PIN, which is commonly used with ATMs, okay, and the mobile apps. So all these things are what you need to cram, all right, in your memory. So if you get it right, fine. If you don't get it right, you are denied access. So that is what you know. You also have what you have. That is what you have physically, like a token device. So token device is an example of what you have. Swipe card. So there are some doors, maybe in the office, maybe the door to the server room that may require a card. Okay, perhaps a code embedded into your ID. Okay, your staff ID. So that is a swipe card. So you are holding it physically. That is why we call it what you have. Then you have what you are. So what you are is basically the use of biometrics. Okay, so bio, from your biology, bio means life. Okay, the metrics means to measure. So we are using physical characteristics to actually be able to give access. So things like iris, things like retina, features like your fingerprints, your palm, facial recognition. Okay, so all these could be used to develop a biometric system. Okay, so for it to be multi-factor authentication, we have to combine at least two of these levels. So, for example, you cannot call password and PIN multi-level authentication. It is not, because password and PIN are in the same category of what you know. You cannot call fingerprints, all right, and facial recognition multi-level authentication, because both of them are biometrics. So for you to have multi-factor authentication, we'll be looking at something like fingerprint and password. Fingerprint is what you are, password is what you know. Or we can use something like passphrase and token. So passphrase is what you know, then token is what you have. So the more complex the authentication system is, the more difficult it is to hack that system, and of course the more expensive. So you have to look at cost benefit analysis when you want to implement controls. Okay, so you need to be able to justify. So if you are going to use multi-factor authentication, there must be a security justification. You need to be able to say, oh, these are the kind of risks that you are trying to mitigate. So there's no point using multi-factor authentication on, to access a non-critical information asset. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so thank you for your time. I will be sharing more videos later, so please try and subscribe to the channel.